of this presentation, including something that may be helpful to many of you if you are interested in Andrews, some of the links and resources that will help you find out more and kind of do a deep dive. So anyway, thank you so much for this time to gather together. I'm sorry it's over a computer screen rather than in person. Andrews University, if you've not heard a lot about it before, is one of the older colleges in the state of Michigan. We're a private university operated by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we have students, as you'll see, from all over the world, from all sorts of backgrounds, and the Ghana Agreement has helped deepen the power that Andrews has as a truly international university. There's a couple of ways that we describe ourselves. By the way, we started in 1874 in Battle Creek, and we moved to where we operate now back in 1901. And so since 1901, we've been in Berrien Springs, Michigan. If you've not looked at a map yet, that's kind of straight across the lake from Chicago. But Andrews University, as we try to describe what we're doing, we talk about this idea of Andrews being a place where you can seek knowledge, affirm faith, and change the world. And this latter bit, changing the world, is something that we really think is super essential for our students, for our faculty, and our staff. And so one of the ways that we've tried to summarize that three-part statement is to be even more direct, to say Andrews is a place where world changers are made here. And today, you've already met both of us. I specifically work, as Michelle was saying, with the president on University and Public Affairs, and Kwame is CEO of the Aspire Business Network. And we're happy to note, as is true of all of the people that you see on the screens today, part of the story of Andrews as well. Kwame is a graduate of our business program here. As Kwame mentioned, this is a conversation that began in 2018, and it was an exciting conversation to have. Andrews already has about 60 different educational partners around the world, and there's usually every school year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the context of even studying in Ghana, perhaps. We have 2,000 or 3,000 students every year that are studying everywhere in the world, but this agreement in 2018 was exciting because it was the first chance that we had not only to work with another institution, but to work with a country. And the idea that we had, and you can see the ceremony from back in 2018, as we met with His Excellency and the other individuals that you see photographed here, it was this idea of how can Andrews partner with the dreams and the hopes, the educational needs of an entire country. And so this has been an exciting thing to work on. If you look at the time frame, this is 2018, so everyone could pose very close to each other. 2019, as I'll share in a moment here, we visited Ghana a couple of times, and then 2020 was 2020. So it's been an interesting journey, especially over the last year. But we'll talk some more about that at the end. As we did this agreement, one of the reasons that Aspire Business, the key reason that Aspire Business Network is sharing this information with you, and I'm happy to be a part of it, is Aspire Business Network is our designated affiliate in working with students on this Ghana agreement. And as we go through the presentation, I'm going to share with you some of the ways that that will happen. But you may already know about their website, but if you go to the website, this is what you'll see, and you'll see another version of the picture that we just looked at. As we do the work in Ghana, in addition to the national agreement, we've also begun to work closely and directly with a couple of educational institutions. First, in Kumasi, we work with KNUST on a program that gives students the opportunity to study aviation. This is really tied in to that incredible new transportation hub that's being built in Kumasi that'll be a leader for West Africa in terms of aviation maintenance and repair. And so our program has given, on our campus, and I'll talk about that in a minute, has given the students at that university in engineering a chance to come to Andrews and focus on aviation skills. Near Accra, Valley View University, we have a transfer agreement with that university. For some students, they begin their studies in Ghana, then they transfer and finish at Andrews University. But all of these students, when they come, qualify for the scholarships that Kwame was talking about, and we'll mention a bit more in a moment. As Kwame also mentioned, as we visited, as I've had the privilege to visit Ghana 2 times in 2019 before COVID-19 came along, we spent time at the embassy in Ghana. We've done presentations at Education USA, which is part of the US Embassy there in Accra. We've met with the Scholarship Secretariat because one of our dreams as we work together with students from Ghana is to not only have the opportunity to offer some scholarships from Andrews University or discounts, but also to find ways for financial resources and support for selected students from Ghana. And we're continuing to work on forging those partnerships. And as you think about Andrews, as you work with Aspire, as you work with Andrews University, we're going to continue to try to define and understand what those options are so that, as you make the significant investment in a US education, if that's your choice, that there's lots of help coming into you, not only from the university, but hopefully from some agencies in Ghana as well. And just here's a few shots of some of the meetings that we've had. We've met with KNUST, we've met at the Secretariat, we've met with some ambassadors and retired Supreme Court justices, all part of finding out ways that Andrews and the country of Ghana can work together to serve students who are interested in coming to study at Andrews. Again, two of the kind of main partnerships that we've been talking quite a bit about is aviation. And we have a small airport near campus, and we have a program that focuses also on both on pilot training and mechanics training. And again, as we were talking a few moments ago, this really, as we work together with KNUST and with the country of Ghana, is really focused on expanding the skill set and the resources needed for that new transportation hub. We're working also on a nursing program option for graduate, doctorate of nursing practitioner. You'll see some information about that on the Aspire Business Network. We're working specifically to find out ways to deliver that sort of program, not at Andrews University, but there in Ghana. And so as you think about your future, especially if you're thinking of a career in nursing, this is one particular project that's really active right now, and we're working on some of the final steps to launch that program. But again, the idea for this program, unlike the aviation program, with this program, students would earn that doctorate while studying there in Ghana. The other thing that we've talked about this year, and I want to now kind of tell you specifically about Andrews University, is you'll remember that we talked about World Changers Made Here. This last year, as we think about changing the world, we're living in a world that's dramatically changed and impacted by the reality of the global pandemic, especially in the United States, where there has been a significant impact on the residents of the United States, both in disease and also with death. One thing that Andrews has done is, with this idea of being world changers for a changing world, is we've really re-engineered the campus this year to make sure that we're keeping each other safe. We're keeping each other protected. We have, and we can share links with you if you want to read a lot more about this, but in particular, all of us, as we've begun studying together this school year, have committed to what we call a community covenant of care. And it covers everything from how do we mask up when we're around each other, what are the physical distancing guidelines. All of us, myself included, check in every day to share our health symptoms. And it's really made a big difference on our campus. This March, for example, we've had only one case so far. We've done baseline testing, by the way, of all students, all employees at Andrews University. And so our positivity rate, which is one way to measure how things are going in any particular location, our positivity rate is about half that of the state of Michigan. And so with God's blessings and with the commitment of our campus, we really have been able to come together as a community for a changing world right now. Obviously, COVID-19, by the way, as you know, as all of us know, has really affected how travel works. I mean, that's one reason why we're getting together on a Zoom screen rather than in person somewhere. We've had some students, even this semester, that have been able to get visas to come study at the United States. I think especially with some of the aspirations and the progress with vaccinations in the US that President Biden just talked about last evening, suggests that I think especially as we look at the new school year, which begins in August, September 2021, some of these protocols can and will need to continue to be in place. But Andrews is really committed to making sure that as we come together in community, especially in this world right now, we're also changing how Andrews operates so that we can keep each other safe. On our campus, we talked about 2 different programs, but actually altogether we have just under 170 different degree programs. If you get the PDF after we talk today, I will set up the PDF so that you can click through and see the 68 different graduate programs or the undergraduate programs. But we're a campus, we're a fairly small university campus. We have about 3,500 students at any one time, and about half of those are graduate and half of those are undergraduate. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things that Andrews is super proud of is, thanks to students from Ghana and everywhere in the world, I'm going to share some of the country details later on. US News every year, as you may know, ranks different ways that individual universities excel. Andrews University on those annual rankings is in the top 10 for both the most ethnically diverse campus, National University campus, and the highest number of international students of all national universities. That's a group of about 400. So one of the things that I always like to say to students, and it's an amazing thing to think about, is if we're going to talk about changing the world as we're trained for our future skills and our calling in life, it's important to understand what the world is like. And so as students come onto our campus, they really have the opportunity to be in an environment that looks like our world looks right now. Altogether, in any given school year, we've got about 100 different countries on our campus, and the flags of the different countries are really an important part of celebrating that tradition. This is one of our alumni parades each year. At graduation and other high events on campus, we actually have an entire flag mall in which we lift up the flags of the countries represented by our students in a given year. Over the last nearly 150 years that Andrews University has been in operation, we've had more than 100,000 graduates now, and those students come from 180 different countries around the world, more than 180. We are talking in part about hopefully some of you, many of you, thinking about coming to study in Southwest Michigan on our main campus. This is an aerial view of our main campus. Again, as I was mentioning, this is where about 3,300 to 3,400 students study each year. Berrien Springs in Southwest Michigan, if you've not looked it up on maps or in Google, is very much a rural area. There's a lot of agriculture around the university. And in the county where we live, but we're also close to some big population centers. In particular, Chicago is a couple of hours away, and so our students have kind of a nice blend of a quiet rural setting, but also larger urban centers to get to when they desire to visit bigger cities. One of the things that we're proud about on our campus, and we kind of looked at it just quickly, but if you look at the number of students compared to the number of teachers, is we have a really nice, what they call teacher-student ratio. What that means in particular is that you'll be in smaller classes, especially as you work on specific degree-related classes. Classes may be as small as 10 or 15 or 20 students. You'll be doing research projects or publishing as you study here, where you're going to be working directly with professors. In fact, one of the things that we're really excited about is for both undergraduate and graduate students, our students who are doing projects that involve publication or conference presentations are getting that experience to work alongside professors to go to regional or national conferences and present what they've learned, which really equips them for either graduate study or for employment once they're done with their studies at Andrews. There's also support. Students who need help with student success, just study habits, or perhaps tutoring in a specific course. We've got a full-blown student success center that will help you with those things. One of the things that we wanted to spend some time talking about today is, obviously, as you may have thought about studying in the United States or studying at Andrews University, the question for anybody who's making an investment in higher education is, how do we help pay for that? And I'm going to go through figures here that you can go back and reference on the website, but I want to give you the overall picture. First off, as Kwame was sharing, for students who come as undergrads on our campus, earning their bachelor's degree or perhaps even an associate degree, a 2-year degree, a 2 or a 4-year degree, is we offer through this Ghana agreement an international partner scholarship. And as you think about Andrews and as you apply to Andrews, one of the things that I, along with the Spire Business Network, will do will be to help clarify which of these scholarships or discounts that you qualify for. Some of our students, including some of the ones who are pictured here on this conference today, are graduate students. And so for students who come to study at Andrews through the graduate programs, there's an offer of 50% tuition reduction for selected graduate degrees. And some programs actually may have an even larger discount. We will help those of you who are thinking about graduate programs confirm how that's available, but in particular, Kwame and the Aspire team work directly with the graduate programs on campus to make sure that you're getting the maximum benefit possible through the Ghana agreement. And then, as I mentioned, some students can and will and may need to or choose to study at a distance. And so one part of Andrews University is, as I was mentioning earlier, through our 60 different partners around the world, is we're also delivering Andrews Studies courses and degrees through distance. And so this Ghana agreement, for students who might be interested in that, will have discounts, of 50 to 75% for online degrees. Again, if you're thinking about any of these things, we can help you with the math and the details on that. And again, also, as we're continuing to work with different government agencies and entities in Ghana, we're going to also try to help you identify support that may come from resources there in Ghana as well as you study at Andrews. One of the things that's really great about Andrews, and it's part of a side effect of being in a more rural location with being a primarily residential campus. Probably about 2 out of every 3 undergraduate students live in residence halls on campus. Graduate students live in the community, but there are apartment complexes that are owned by the university and also a residential facility that's focused on graduate housing. So there's really a campus that kind of focuses on not only what happens inside of the classroom, but also how do you build community with each other across campus. And by the way, one of the things that's really powerful with this, I don't have a slide of it in this presentation, is the international student organizations on campus. There's a center for our international students on campus, and not only do they help you get oriented to life at Andrews, but they also help with the various clubs that are part of our campus community. And there's an International Student Month or weekend where we recognize international students. And one of the big events for our local community, which has been on pause during the pandemic, is our International Student Food Fair, or our International Food Fair, which is international students being chefs. That usually brings in about 10,000 people every time we do it. And it gives you a chance to experience all sorts of great food from all over the world. This, by the way, is bubble soccer, if you've never played bubble soccer or football before. Right from the very start, and we're going to talk about this a bit more at the end, is one thing that's really important as you go to a university is it's a big transition, no matter how far away you go to university. My first university was only a few hundred kilometers from where I grew up. But I remember that moment when my dad drove away, and it was kind of a lonesome moment. And one of the things that's really been true in higher education is it's so important to form connections as soon as you get on campus, any campus. And so one thing that Andrews is really committed to from the very start is to do orientations and connect students together in what we call mentoring groups, so that even if you're coming for a place where you don't know many other people, you start to form those connections from the very start. And this is a picture of one of those orientation activities. Our mascot, by the way, is a cardinal. If you've not seen a cardinal, it's a red bird. His name is Andy, since he's with Andrews University. And you'll probably see him around, and not only on campus, but off. I mentioned to you that Chicago is right across the lake from Andrews University in Berrien Springs. This is a picture of the beach on our side of the lake, Lake Michigan, just showing some of the opportunities for recreation in the local area. Right on campus, this just opened up fall of 2019 is our new Andreason Center for Wellness. It's got a saltwater pool, it's got exercise equipment, it's got, as you'll see in a moment here, a huge gymnasium, water therapy areas. There's a physiotherapist that works there. There are classrooms in here. And this is really kind of a place where Andrews, as it talks about this idea of being a well-rounded or a whole student, that includes development of our body as well as development of our mind and our spirit. One of the things that's especially exciting with this new Andreasen Center is the gymnasium for our sports on campus. There's not a lot of intercollegiate sports at Andrews University, but there's a lot of intramural sports on campus. And then with things like basketball and football, soccer, we do compete with other small universities like ours. Another great building on campus for those of you who enjoy the performing arts and music is our Howard Performing Arts Center. And that's a place where student organizations provide concerts throughout the year, as well as other musical artists and speakers coming in throughout the school year. This is also a place for those who go to church on Saturday. One of our church fellowships meets in the Howard Performing Arts Center as well. We'll see a picture of that in a minute. You remember that when we talked about Andrews, we talked about seek knowledge, affirm faith, and change the world. Andrews, again, is a faith-based university, and we think it's really important, as I was just mentioning with wellness, developing our body. It's also important, we believe, to develop your spirit, your faith, as you're a student at university. And so there's all sorts of different ways that are really student-focused, that are often led by students, all sorts of different meetings and gatherings throughout the week and the weekend to gather together, worship together, and pray together. This is one of our services in Pioneer Memorial Church. I mentioned the Howard Performing Arts Center is a place where we have weekend church services as well. The New Life Fellowship meets there. This is a picture from one of our Black History Month events in the Howard Performing Arts Center with really great wax block dresses. I think that's the right term on the ladies in the back. I included this picture because this gentleman here, VP Michael Nixon, is our Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion. You'll remember that I shared with you that Andrews is usually number 1 or 2 in the nation in terms of ethnic diversity. Again, 8, 9, or 10 in terms of international student population. And so VP Nixon's work in part is to help deepen what that means for us as a community. No matter what your cultural background, wherever you're from, VP Nixon as a VP for Diversity and Inclusion really thinks and talks about how do we become a community that is truly connected and truly understands each other. There's a new center that VP Nixon opened up called the Truth for Racial Healing and Transformation that uses story circles to talk with each other about what our own worldviews and our own biases may be and the things that we need to learn from each other. The other way that we kind of engage faith is by doing service in the community. One of the big events each year is Change Day or Change Weekend, and it's a day or a weekend where the entire campus, students, faculty, and staff go out in the community and do projects to make a difference. Because again, If we're talking about changing the world, how do we understand the world, and how do we begin world changing while we're students at Andrews? So that's a quick review of Andrews University. Let me walk through with you a few slides that you'll want to spend time later on looking at more carefully. If you haven't seen it yet, and again, you'll find links to this from the Aspire Network page in the PDF that you can get if you're interested. These items will be clickable links at the bottom. But there's a main page for Andrews. If you've got a pencil handy, it's an easy URL to write down. It's andrews.edu/go/Ghana. And this is what you'll see, and you've seen bits of this already. This page is kind of the main page that collects all the information that will be relevant to you as you're getting ready to attend Andrews if you make that choice. You saw part of this before. Here's the picture of the signing from 2018. There's kind of an introduction to what Andrews and Ghana are hoping to accomplish through this agreement. And then you see Kwame and his colleagues. This talks about how the Aspire Business Network is part of this process. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, we've talked about aviation and nursing, but there's about 170 different degree programs to look at, and you can see links on those here, and also ways to contact Aspire Business Network. The next part of the page, as you're thinking about Andrews, and this is, especially as you start to work with Aspire, this is the moment where Andrews and Aspire will work together with you. This section of the page will walk you through all the steps that you need to take to be admitted at Andrews. How do you create an account? How do you submit an application? By the way, when you're ready to submit the application, Aspire Business Network will give you a code that will waive the application fee. What are the different materials you need to submit in terms of transcripts and so on? And then how is the admission decision made? So, once you have the idea of Andrews, and as you study it, and as you're ready to explore becoming a student at Andrews, this part of the page will be relevant. The next step, once you're admitted, and we were referencing some of this a bit earlier on, is how does the student visa process work? And this is something where, as I tell international students, when you come to a college in the United States, there's actually two kinds of admission. One is, of course, the academic admission. But from a US visa perspective, a student visa perspective, each university is also asked to establish and confirm the financial arrangements to attend university. And so you'll see here on the page, I won't go into detail today, but you'll see the different steps, the amount of money that needs to be paid as a deposit, the sorts of legal information like copy of your passport, and then what we have someone who works specifically with you on that financial review process. That's Mrs. Yates in our International Student Service Center, and she'll help walk you through those things. But we will work with you to confirm that Andrews will be helping you in these specific ways. You have resources to help offset those other expenses. And so that financial review plus the academic review qualifies you to get a visa. As you may know, the visa is actually a two-step process. One step is Andrews University and other universities in the United States who are approved by the US government issues an I-20 to you. So actually we're issuing an I-20, but on behalf of the US government. That I-20 then becomes something that you take into the embassy for an interview. And this links you through to other information that you may need, or also gives you an option to reach out to our International Student Services team if you have any questions. And then once you, by the way, that whole process ideally should be happening 2 months, 1 to 2 months, certainly ideally 2 months or more before you enroll, simply because, especially right now, getting in for a visa interview is sometimes complicated. And so allowing yourself enough time is important. And then once you come to Andrews, Most students, we talked about Chicago a bit earlier on, most students fly into Chicago. Some fly into South Bend, which is a city closer to us. And this kind of walks you through the steps of how do you travel and get to Andrews and get safely on campus. By the way, as you work out arrangements with the International Student Services team, they have options that are covered by your initial fees and deposits to come pick you up at the South Bend airport, and they'll help you take a bus from either the O'Hare Airport or Midway Airport in Chicago, which is where most students fly when they go to Chicago, to South Bend, and then we'll come pick you up and get you to where you're headed. So on all of these, when you spend time on this page, there's lots of links that kind of drill down to further information. At the very bottom of the page, you'll see just the final steps of how do you get ready for arriving on campus. How do you get your username set up? How do you arrange for housing and for your meal plans, the financial plans, registering, setting up for your books. International students, as you may know, can work 20 hours a week on the campus of wherever they're attending as a university. During the summer months, they can work up to 40 hours a week, and so on. And then at the very bottom, even with all of this information, you can get stuck. And so this just gives you a bunch of direct email addresses, whether it's applications or finances or international student services. And as we've been talking all along, Aspire Business Network is also going to be walking alongside you as you get ready to come. And so their contact information. If you go to the Aspire Business Network page for education, you'll see some more about what Mr. Antwi Frempong was talking about earlier. You can see some information on the Doctorate of Nursing program that you're working on. And so between these two sites, and again, when you get this PDF, there will be a way to click through to those as well. You'll get the basic information you need to prepare and work your way through this process. And one other point about the Aspire Business Network that I've been happy to participate in, and not just because there was pizza involved, and that is that we get together with the students who come from Ghana and do an orientation session where we just sit down and talk with each other face to face about what you might need to know, how you can get ready, what are the connections that are important for you as someone who has roots and connections back home in Ghana. And then on top of this orientation done by the Aspire Business Network, our institution, International Student Services, also does an orientation for our international students. And then there's a general orientation as well. So again, getting back to that idea of when you first come to Andrews, it's really important to form strong connections with each other, with people who can help you out. And so what I wanted to share today as we kind of got to the end of this presentation is we're really committed to making sure that we can help you with those connections in the best ways possible. And with what Aspire does, with what the International Student Services Department does, with our student life team does to help you orient to life at Andrews, those are all happening literally in your first several days on campus. And they're all foundational to the journey that you're going to take towards a degree in your future with Andrews University. So Michelle, who introduced us right at the start, is one of our students who has come through this agreement. And Michelle, I thought it would be good, you've spoken before, but to now talk about your own personal journey, what you experienced, what you found out about Andrews, what you wish you knew before you got here. Why don't you share a few thoughts right now? And we can say the thing that, yep. The 2020 quote of the year, you're muted. Now you're not muted.
Yes. Definitely coming to Andrews has been a great experience. Let me begin again by stating I am very grateful to the program that has been established here by Aspire Business Network and Andrews University, because it is a result of the collaboration that I am able to be here today. Coming to Andrews, honestly, I would say was very relatively at least smooth a process for me. mainly because of how structured the whole arrival process is, as you mentioned in your presentation. Right from application when I was back in Ghana, applying to Andrews, getting your papers, applying for your visa. Like I remember getting a call. I always say it. I remember getting a call from Aspire Business Network running me through the visa interview, how it was gonna, because I was shaking in my boots. But they help you with that. And also even when I got to Andrews University, there's paperwork to be done, signing, getting checked in. And I'm new here, so it's kind of confusing, but then they're there to help you with that. Andrews University, I'd say it's a very serene campus. Like Dr. Payne said, it's a suburban community, so it's very calm, but then it's close to these huge cities, like we're next to Indiana, Chicago, so you're able to, go where you need to go. And also, I personally really appreciate the diversity because I haven't really been exposed to many foreigners. It's a very different culture. Like even just on my floor, there's like people from Colombia, people from there was a country that I didn't heard of before. But then you meet all these people and it's very exciting, and you're sharing different ideas and Christian wise, also with our culture, what we do, our studies, and everything is great. Plus, also let me mention my program. I'm studying international business and French. It's a wonderful combination. I'm just the only university out of the schools I applied to that has this perfect combination for me. So it's a wonderful program. It's wonderful teachers, and I must add before I end that I feel like the culture here in terms of academics is here to help you. Like it's actually, I see that for most universities it's more like if you don't do the work, you fail, well, that's on you. But here they really want to help you make sure you're on your feet, especially with the Student Success Center. So you're not just coming, with a blind side, not knowing what to do, but you're coming with people who are here to hold your hand. So in every way, there's help financially in terms of settling in. So I definitely would say, yeah, take the chance. It's not as scary as it sounds, moving continents, but it's a great experience.
Great.
That's my.
And thank you, Michelle. And by the way, I totally misspelled your name. I'm very sorry about that on this slide.
It's
Put an E on
fine.
the end. My mistake, not yours.
Yes,
So
it's okay.
yeah, thank you so much. The thought that we had is right at the end is to make sure that we offered some time for you to ask questions. I think that Miss Amanda, you might be able to see if there are any questions in Facebook, or we can add those questions. But feel free to type in a question for either Aspire Business at Work or for me, and we'll do the best we can to answer the question. Or if we can't answer it, we can figure out a way to get you the answers you need. So.
Yes, please. Thank you once again, Dr. Payne and Michelle, as well as Mr. Kwame Frimpong. Thank you. I believe our very first question we have here is from Sadiq, and he wants to know about the GMAT waiver. I think over time there was mention probably in the news about some schools waiving SATs and GMATs and all of these things. So I believe he's asking whether that applies to Andrews University as well.
I think with regards to the SATs, if a person is coming to Andrews to the agreement and they have the WATC, they don't require the SATs. So that's been the tradition since we started the program. And with regards to the GMAT, it is still a requirement, but I think it's delayed, so you can apply to come without the GMAT, but once you get here, you have a certain period of time, which I can confirm what length of time to be able to complete the GMAT, at least for the School of Business. So I know that it has not been completely waived, but there are ways where you don't have to take it before you get here. There are circumstances, I think, if you have practiced as an accountant or something like that for a certain number of years continuously, they can waive it if you have high grades. But all these are things that you have to check with academic records to make sure that you qualify for it. But I don't think there is a complete Gmat waiver. I don't.
Yeah, a couple of quick footnotes to what you've just shared, sir. Especially with COVID-19, no matter what, some of these testing requirements are paused at the moment. But this is a really good question because in particular, and as Kwame's been sharing, whatever program you're going into, we can help you find the specific answers or variables that would apply to the program that you're choosing, and also especially as Andrews works with a lot of different international students, as Kwame mentioned, sometimes some of these test requirements may be held until after you arrive, and even after you arrive, if there is a test that you'd be working on, one part of the Student Success Center and the different academic programs is, I know throughout the school year, there are different sort of test preparation workshops that will help you be prepared to meet whatever testing requirement might relate to your degree. And, you know, again, especially as you're thinking of different graduate programs, the requirements are a little bit different with each program, whether it's testing, and also, as we've shared, some of the discounts will vary. But we're really committed with Aspire and also with the Aspire Business Network and Andrews University to help confirm exactly what the case is for the program you're interested in if you are looking at graduate studies.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Payne. The next question is from Michael Amponsa, and he wants to know how long does it take to have the I-20 issued after making tuition payment?
Okay. It's since the I-20 itself is literally issued by Andrews University, we have two individuals that are designated government officers actually for those I-20s. I would say generally speaking, it's about a 2-week process once to issue the I-20. At certain times of the year, it gets busier. But since it's all done internally and we now have a center that all of those services are centralized both physically and functionally, the next step, because usually the financial review and that payment of the deposit and those initial payments are the final step before the I-20. And so, yeah, generally speaking, I found that it's usually 2 weeks plus or minus. And if there's a need to rush or kind of facilitate something, that's something where we're committed to at least finding out if that's a possibility, if that's needed. And, you know, certainly, especially as we get into the summer months, especially right now, as we're trying to navigate the realities of getting in for visa interviews at a complicated time, we're interested in working really closely with you to make sure that happens.
Thank you. And I just received another question from Kese Kwache, and he wants to know whether the scholarship applies to Ghanaians already living in the United States.
At this point, the program is for Ghanaians that are living in the country of Ghana or who have their immediate family in Ghana.
I think there's a little clarification there. For as long as you qualify per Ghana's definition of who a Ghanaian is, the geographical location doesn't matter anymore. I'm not sure. Per the agreement, so if the person is already here but qualifies as a Ghanaian, the person can apply for the scholarship.
Yep. And you know, as you're specifically interested, we'll work out and confirm all those details.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have another question in our email from Nanajwa Bani, and she wants to know if the admission period for international students can be extended beyond a year due to COVID-19.
Sure. What has happened, especially with COVID-19, is if a student is not able to come at, say, an initial semester or even during an initial school year, there'll be a process where we can simply put that admission on hold. It would be a matter of, when, renewing the I-20 and so forth, once that term of admission is sorted out. Yes, there is a way to, if for whatever reason you're not able to make it at the time that you originally planned to come, we can postpone by a semester or a year or whatever time frame is needed. If it's more than a year, at times some of the admission process needs to be revisited. But if it's within a semester or a year delay, that original admission decision and all the paperwork and so on will still hold.
Yes, please. Thank you once again. And I have another question from Sadiq, and he would like to know if the embassy denies you visa, what happens next?
Well, certainly one option is to set up another interview. And I know sometimes some of our international students may have done a couple of interviews because 2 or 3 interviews because the first 1 or 2 had been denied. It's my understanding that that doesn't mean that you won't ever get a visa, but you'll have to go back at it again. So, and I think as Kwame was sharing, or Michelle, actually, you shared this anecdote of really kind of getting support as you get ready for that visa interview. Certainly the resources are there with Aspire Business Network, also with our International Student Services team, to make sure that you have kind of all the tips and the background that you need to be prepared to do well in that interview. So, but sometimes, and by the way, one of the things that we've done is we've visited Ghana and we've visited the US Embassy there, is we've tried to make sure that they have clear information about this partnership and about Andrews University and Andrews University's rankings, so that as you encounter different embassy officials, our hope is that they know more and more about Andrews, so that part of the conversation goes well also.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. Michelle, any questions?
Actually, yeah, but let me just add to what Dr. Payne just said about the visas. I just want to emphasize and stress that it is important for you to work with Aspire Business Network or Aspire Skills Hub when you're during the visa interview, because it increases the chances. I'd say definitely it lays with the US Embassy as whether you be granted the visa or not. But because of the process Aspire has already established, the relationship that it has established, you're likely to get clearance because it's just an easier process. But if you do it on your own, it might be a little more difficult. Am I right, Mr. Andreason?
Well, we are certainly able to give some
advice.
We
yes.
don't give visas though.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah. But
I was just talking, sorry to jump on top, we were just talking a little while ago about how do you prepare for tests. And, not to be silly, but the visa interview is its own kind of test. And taking the time to really understand how it works, to really study the details that are important to understand. I mean, you're still going to have to go in and take that test, or you're still going to have to go in and do that interview. But really taking the time to understand what the test represents and as Michelle has been sharing, what the interview represents, will hopefully make a difference. I mean, it's at the end of the day, there's no guarantees there, but having solid preparation is really kind of the secret sauce, I think, for this process, as I've watched international students over the years. And again, sometimes it will be a no, but that doesn't mean that it's a permanent no. Yeah. We just need to kind of regroup, as they say, and do it again.
I think the point Michelle was trying to make, sometimes students are denied visas partly because of misinformation. So they take things they haven't been asked to bring because someone in Ghana who's never traveled before, told them to add something. So then, and then sometimes too, people are asked to say things that are not true. But the embassy has different ways they can verify certain information. That's why you fill the form, and then you have to give them some number of days or weeks before you go for the interview. They also do their checks. So these are some of the simple things that sometimes create problems for students. So with Michelle and some of the other students that we've been very successful with, we just let them know there's no need for you to go and tell a lie, and make sure that the requirements, the things that the international students office told you to have are the things that you are taking to the interview. Don't present the university with a different bank statement and try to take another bank statement to the interview. So these are some of the little things that we kind of tell students, and that's why we've been, pretty successful lately. So thanks, Michelle, for that comment.
Yeah, really good points.
So Michelle,
the question, I was gonna ask, Dr. Payne,
Yes.
some are asking, what about the GRE and TOEFL requirements for applying to Andrews? Do they need it? Do Ghanaians need that test?
Yeah, in terms of the TOEFL or MELAB, some of the other English proficiency tests, for students who have studied in an English, who've taken their education in English, then there's not a requirement for TOEFL or MELAB. So if I'm trying to think of the right word, but if you've been going to school for 4 years or more where the language of instruction is English, then you're not required to present a TOEFL. GRE, Gmat, some of these graduate admission tests that we've been talking to, or even for undergraduates, in some cases, the SAT or the ACT, those will really vary by program, but we'll work with you to confirm which tests will be needed. And as we were talking earlier, for example, some of the graduate tests may be required, but they can be taken. There's also options to take the TOEFL on campus once you arrive. But again, based on the specific program or the specific testing related with your program, we'll help confirm those details as you work through the application and admission process.
Okay, so I don't know if Michelle still has any question.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask here. So Andrews University is an Adventist university. What do you have to say to applicants who are non-Adventists or non-Christians and applying to Andrews University, please?
Sure. Even though we're an Adventist university, we do not require students to be Adventist to attend. We do have certain citizenship expectations. There are classes in religion and different meetings that may be religious during the week. But we have students who come from both a Judeo-Christian background to other backgrounds. We have Muslim students, we have students who are atheists who are studying Andrews, we have students from other faith communities. Our Chinese students, for example, may come from a Buddhist, or Thai students may come from a Buddhist background. And so we believe it's really important to have to welcome all backgrounds and all sorts of belief systems, even though in particular Andrews is an Adventist institution. To give you a statistic on that, probably roughly speaking overall, 4 out of every 5 students do have an Adventist background. And on the graduate side, there's probably even more of a closer to equal mix of Adventists to other faith and belief backgrounds. And by the way,
Okay.
as you apply,
Thank you,
one of the,
Dr. Payne. One last question from my side. Okay.
oh, I was just going to add, as you look at the university, there's specifically a community values agreement that each student signs as she or he chooses to attend. And that really kind of sets out the sort of standards, not necessarily, not about what you believe, but just how we live together in a community. By the way, it's also a campus that has only vegetarian food in the dining services, and there are restrictions against smoking and alcohol use and so on. And so those are all kind of set out in that community values statement. But it's certainly not a question of, are you an Adventist, but are you open to studying and living within what this campus looks like?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Payne. I certainly agree with that. I personally faced a bit of a culture shock when I came on here, but yeah, it's a welcoming environment and you can definitely fit in no matter your belief or what your background is. So my last question that I have here before Amanda, but the scholarship, once you get it in the undergraduate level, is it possible to apply or qualify again at the graduate level for the scholarship?
Correct. Yeah. If you decided to continue on as a graduate student, even for the first time or after the undergraduate degree, the scholarship that we've talked about of $14,000 is for undergraduate studies. When you get into the graduate programs, Aspire and we will work with you to confirm what the Ghana agreement offers in terms of a discount for the graduate programs. Especially for both undergraduate or graduate, these are from Andrews University, either the main scholarship or the main discount that you'll get. Other support would need to come from your own resources or your family resources. You may find a sponsor, and or there may be some support, as I've mentioned earlier, that we're working on for some students from agencies in Ghana as well to help offset expenses. But
Okay,
from an Andrews perspective, this is a scholarship or this is the discount.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Back to Ms. Amanda. Are there any questions on your side from Facebook, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dr. Payne. So I have another question from Prince Darcom, and he would like to know if you have already applied for the I-20 and you couldn't come within the required time, am I supposed to apply for another I-20, and will it come with extra charges?
No, we were talking about this peripherally a bit earlier. Yes, if for some reason you can't get in at a specific time, either the visa interview didn't work or something happened with your family, we would simply issue a new I-20, and the deposits and so forth that you paid earlier would still be in force. And by the way, when students pay their deposits, international students, there's kind of two upfront deposits. One is the $3,000 international student deposit, and then there's a $100 one-time international student fee. That $3,000 deposit is refundable. And so once a student finishes studies, or even if they couldn't come at all, that amount of money is refunded or put against the bill, whatever the student decides to do. And then also each semester, there will be a certain amount of the fees, as is true of all students, that you will need to pay up front. And that would be part of the I-20 process, and we'd confirm those dollars with you.
Okay,
But the other tuition would obviously just be a down payment. The
Mm.
tuition payment would be a down payment against the tuition and fees of your first semester of study.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Payne. I have another question. This is also coming from Sadiq, and he would like to know about working on campus as an international student.
Sure. I mentioned this really briefly earlier. If you come to study in the United States with a student visa, you are limited to working on the campus where you're attending school. We have, you'll find on the website, if you start looking at the website, you'll find where you can look online to find out what student positions are open at any one time. But generally speaking, during a school year, you can work 20 hours a week. During the summer, if you decide to live on campus, you can work up to 40 hours a week. The variations on that is if you do an internship, or there's also at the end of your studies what's called optional practical training, or most people will often just say OPT. That will give you, I think, up to a year to work at a US employer that's not connected with campus. And so what some students do is that 1 year term is that 1 year of optional practical training is tied to the degree. So if you do a graduate degree, there would be another OPT year, or an undergraduate would have OPT. I know some of my colleagues, I had a good friend who came from Vietnam to study at Andrews in business, like you're doing, Michelle. And so she actually did a paid internship between her junior and senior year that used up 3 months of her OPT. And then once she graduated, she worked 9 more months. And then in her case, she came back as a graduate student and then also did OPT connected with her graduate studies. So again, to kind of quickly summarize, generally speaking, you can work, you need to work on campus 20 hours a week during the school, up to 20 hours a week, and up to 40 hours a week during break.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Payne. I have my final 2 questions here. This one was a message, and the person is asking, how safe is Berrien Springs?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one advantage of being in a suburban rural campus. Things are relatively safe almost all of the time. Yeah, it's probably most runnings, probably the bigger problems, safety and crime-wise, are running stop signs on campus. Each university in the US does have what they call a Clery report. So we're obligated to be transparent about anything that happened in terms of safety, but those reports are minimal. That's one thing that, again, is an advantage to being in kind of a quieter part of the United States.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Payne. I think this is our final question, and this is from Kesse, and he wants to know, when applying for this scholarship as a transfer student from another school, what are the requirements in order to be accepted as far as GPA, grades, and all that other stuff? Okay.
Generally speaking, using kind of a US approach to a grade point average, our admission standards, most of the students who are coming in are looking at having a 2.5 to a 3.0 as the minimum. Coming in as a transfer student, whether you're coming in as a freshman or a transfer student on the undergraduate side, we'll be looking for transcripts that will have those standards or higher. By the way, for entering freshmen at Andrews, the average, not the admission requirement, but the average is about 3.3 or 3.4 GPA. And so those are the sorts of students that you'll be studying with. As a transfer student, our real goal is we have students come in. For example, we were talking about students from KNUST up in Kumasi coming in for an aviation degree. They will have already done a couple of years, more or less, at KNUST. What we want to do as students transfer in is that to really focus on making sure that there's not a lot of lost time, that students aren't having to begin all over again. So I would say the other issue for a transfer student coming in are grades at that level, and also classes that really relate to the degree that you're focusing on. For some of our degrees, like in professional areas like architecture or nursing or physical therapy, for example, or engineering, some of the classwork is really focused from early on. So the only risk for a transfer student who may be choosing a professional program is, even with a year or two of studies, there may be some specific courses that you'd work on as well that may mean that it would take a little bit longer to get to your bachelor's degree. But yeah, we have probably each year, there's certainly around 150 to 200 students who transfer in for undergraduate studies. And there's a specific advisor that will work with the student to make sure that the credit transfers, and also that you can understand what requirements you've met by bringing that credit to Andrews University and what credits you still need to take to complete the degree you've chosen.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. And the last one is, sorry, is the aviation program only for undergraduate students?
At this point, yes, it's undergraduate degrees.
Okay, all right. So I think that's the end of the questions on social media. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, by the way, with aviation, aviation is actually part of our College of Professions, which houses the School of Business Administration, where Michelle is studying. And one of the things, Michelle mentioned that she's actually doing two areas of focus. I didn't have them both on the slides. One is international business, but the other is the French angle to that. And so, one thing that's interesting about Andrews is students, for example, someone who's going into aviation or medicine may choose to also do business studies or get a business degree. And so the aviation program itself is an undergraduate program, but depending on the degree path or the career path that you're on, you may choose to also at least study or even earn a second, do what's called a dual degree that would build strengths in both of the areas that you want to focus on.
Great.
And the other bit, as we've been talking about earlier, is Andrews does have each year about 1,700 students who study in the graduate programs. And so even if it's one area for undergraduate and a different area for graduate, there are certainly a number of our international students who end up doing studies in both areas. They start with an undergraduate degree, but to get to their career plans or to build out their skill set, they'll stay and do a graduate degree as well. And again, the Ghana agreement has some options on special pricing for those programs.
Okay, Dr. Payne, I think I have a last question. Sorry, last question, I promise. Can one do MBA and other courses like aviation and language?
Oh, to do all of those?
Yes, please. I think a dual degree.
Oh, a dual degree. An MBA was one of the options?
Yes, please. Aviation and language.
Okay. So for an undergraduate degree, aviation and language could be something that could be done as a dual degree, or you could do business. One of the options in business, there's a number of undergraduate degree options. So there's a BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration, and some other options. And so on the undergraduate side, yes, you could choose aviation and one other undergraduate degree, including degrees in business. The MBA would be after you get an undergraduate degree, but there are in any area and then meet MBA requirements. But for undergraduate studies, there's quite a few options, degree options or program options for an undergraduate degree in business if you're thinking about a dual degree for the undergraduate studies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, whilst we're on this topic, let me just brush this through and ask. Andrews has some programs that allow an undergraduate and MBA combination of some sort. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about this with regard to the program, the scholarship offered here?
Right. Again, from a scholarship perspective, the undergraduate has a scholarship from the Ghana agreement. The undergraduate studies have a scholarship. The graduate programs have a discount. But I think what you're mentioning, Michelle, and I think what the student is maybe asking about is one thing that Andrews has really been focusing on, as well as we talk to students everywhere, is we're talking about this idea of more for less. And I think this ties into what you're talking about. And when I share this PDF, I'll try to include a slide on that. But there's a number of degree programs, as you're talking, Michelle, where we work with students that they can do both undergraduate and graduate while they're here, but in less time than they might think because the programs mesh together. And so there's a certain group of programs that are included in that, and the best way to kind of sort through those would be to look at our more for less page. But I think if I understand the question correctly, that is one thing that we're working on having options for, so that you can really get to a graduate degree as quickly as possible by combining it with the undergraduate and graduate.
Okay.
Okay, I have final slides to share. You heard World Changers Made Here. You heard about Andrews University. My hero in Ghana is Nana Ya Asantewa. And she is so significant that we found her statue. Someone took it down because it's being repaired, but Kwame and I found it, and we were very happy. And some other day we can talk about her speech to the elders about going out to fight. And then Kelly Welly, if I had a choice, I would choose Kamasi Kelly Welly, although I will also eat Kelly Welly from elsewhere in the country. So those are my points for today. I'm really grateful to all of you who came along, and especially to the Aspire Business Network, for Michelle for telling your story, Miss Amanda, Mr. Antwe Frimpong for your insights, and again, especially as we work together, for those of you that are thinking of joining Andrews, we're ready to help as best we can on all these steps that you're taking.
Okay, that was lovely. Thank you so much, Dr. Payne. I'm a student of Andrews, and I have still learned some new things here. So thank you also to our viewers on Facebook. Thank you for being interactive. We hope this has been informational, but you can still reach out to us at info@aspireskillshub.com, and you can go into the Aspire Business Network page to learn more about us. But I'm not going to end this yet. Let's hear from our CEO, Mr. Andreason Center.
Oh, Michelle, thank you. I really don't have much to say. I think Dr. Payne has said it all.
Okay.
The scholarship and the discounts are a great opportunity for all of us. I'm actually using it. I'm in school now studying something else, and I know a lot of people who are also taking advantage of it. We get 250 students a year. We haven't reached that target. So if you are interested, definitely reach out and we'll be more than happy to walk you through the process. So I thank Dr. Payne for coming, and he represents Andrews University. They are doing great things, and we thank them for giving us this opportunity to partner with them. And Michelle, thank you very much for being such a great student. I see you all the time. So, and
thank you
for putting this together. So thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
This has been lovely. So hope everyone has a great weekend. Enjoy. Goodbye.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.